Welcome back to Feature Fanatics. I'm your host, Gal, also known as Film Toppings all across social media. And joining me is the man who I'm honored to introduce as my guest co host for the day. And he's going to be a recurring guest host throughout season 4. He's my partner and co champ from the Globo Gym team of the League of Cinephiles, the Duos Film Trivia Tournament. That was a mouthful. And he's the co-host of the Film Draft podcast and one of the finest film critics from Down Under. It is Jacob the Package Cunningham here with us in the studio today.
Pleasure to be back here once again. Apologies to your listeners who are going to have to hear a lot more of me over the coming months on this show, but always love talking movies with you, man. It's a great time, and I'm really, really excited for today's topic, which is John Carney, who he has a pretty small filmography, but I would genuinely consider him one of my favorite directors. He sort of has a real background in music, but he came up in... Honestly, he's kind of made the same movie 4 times. And I hope he never stops doing that, because music connect these amateur musicians bonding and growing and learning things music can save lives. I really believe that in real life and in movies. And I think Carney believes that too. And he makes some of the greatest comfort movies ever. And I'm excited to talk about him.
And in this podcast, there are 3 other believers of that topic. And, like you said, he has a very small filmography, but we've managed to get some really great episodes out of filmmakers with smaller, rosters like Damien Chazelle or Martin McDonagh. And joining us is another John Carney fan. He is the man who deems me the only non-Aussie on this stream. He does film reviews on at NixFlixFix and interviews for NovaStream Australia, and has interviewed filmmakers behind some of the hottest recent releases, such as Saw 10, Talk to Me, and Gran Turismo. Let's give a well-deserved warm welcome to Nick Libero. How are you doing today?
Gentlemen, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on. As you said, very big fan of John Carney. I do remember the first time I saw Begin Again was the first of his movies I saw. And I fell in love with him from that point. But it's excited to be talking about that. And thanks for having me on. It's nice to meet like-minded film people, and I'm more than happy to be the second finest film critic in Australia after Jacob. So I think that's perfectly fine with me.
I said it one up, so
this guy's much more established film critic than I am. I talk
a lot. So y'all can be tied.
But this is part 1 of our 10-part Aussie takeover of the Film Feature Fanatics podcast. So your days are numbered here, Gal.
Indeed. Jacob started us out on this topic already, but Nick, would you like to elaborate a little to the audiences as to why do we love John Carney?
I mean, I can talk to us as to why I love John Carney, but I think it's going to be quite similar feelings between all of us, is that he seems to make these movies that are very grounded fairy tales. They are movies about relationships, whether it's like romantic or with families. He uses music as a very emotionally driving tool. But at the same time, they're kind of set in these scenarios or in these worlds that do feel a little bit larger than life. And that's where I feel like that fairy tale aspect comes in. It's these tales and these folklore stories about, not wanting to just succeed in something you love, but using that tool to make yourself a better person, to make yourself the better person with the people around you. So I think he just has this beautiful way of looking at humanity through this very rose-colored glasses, but in a very sincere way. So I think that's why I think his films, especially the ones focused around music, really connect with audiences all over the world.
Yeah. This isn't John Carney's debut feature. I might touch on that at the end. He actually does have one film that's not about music, which is unheard of, really. But the first film we're talking about, and really the film that put him on the map as a filmmaker, is Once from 2007. It is a small, not quite a musical, but a music-based film, and it's really a nitty-gritty, a real indie film. They made it for $150,000. I think it took him years to get it off the ground. They shot it with 2 handy cams in the space of a month, and it stars just legit musicians, Glenn Hansard and Marketa Aglova. Glenn Hansard's characters, he's this struggling busker who works in a vacuum cleaner repair shop, and he's trying to get by. And I love that the films, I'm kind of going off tangent here, but a lot of his films are just a love letter to the rowdiness of his people, because the opening scene of Once is some dude trying to steal his money that he made from busking, and it's just this really, really funny scene, and the guy's like, oh fuck, sorry man, like I'm broke too, all right, I'll help you pick up the money that I stole from you. And yeah, very Irish, very charming and sweet, and I think it has some of Carney's best songs. Like, I'm sure we'll talk ad nauseum about Falling Slowly, but that's been in my musical rotation for 10 years, and I think it's one of the greatest songs ever written for a movie.
I actually watched this one for the first time this year.
Oh shit.
And it's a funny story, because when I was at work, I would always like look for a short movie, like an hour and a half movie I could like put on between breaks when I wasn't doing anything. So once hour and 25 minutes, so that's an easy pick. But I saw this after I'd already seen Begin Again and Sing Street. And right away, I feel like he just gets you up close with these characters, because obviously they're relatable. They've got this really great bond. It's a little ambiguous, but they touch on it. And like you said, the cinematography is very simple, but the songs get right to you. And it's, like, who doesn't love seeing like people getting together in a recording studio to do some music? I think there's something great that reaches into your heart with this movie. But yeah, Nick, when did you first watch this movie?
I watched this movie 4 days ago for the first time for this
Oh,
podcast.
wow.
So so it's funny you say that, because like I am a John Carney fan, but I'd only seen Begin Again, Sing Street, and I was excited for Flora and Son. But I've owned the Blu-ray for Once for probably about 7 years, and it's just one of those movies that have sat there. And I heard Falling Slowly, similar to Jacob. Like, I've known that song for 10 years, like probably more, because of just how culturally impactful the song was just on its own outside the film. It is everything that I've seen from John Carney's works that we're going to talk about later in the episode. This seems like the pure foundation for all of that. It's so raw and it's so authentic. Like, it's capturing, like Jacob was saying, that charm of Ireland. And that opening scene, right? Because obviously I was just reading up just some random trivia and stuff. They were filming that on just these long lenses and just letting the two guys go at it. And someone actually tried to stop the burglar in the, like, actually tackled him down and hurt him. I don't know if he had any insane like bone breaks or anything, but like, that's just a testament to this sort of guerrilla style of filmmaking. You just, what better way to capture the raw, authentic charm of Ireland than just filming in the streets of Ireland? So to me, it just has this energy to it that I don't think can be replicated by a big studio production, because all he had was $150,000, 2 cameras, and some very talented artists, and that's what you get on screen. But it's this, like we were saying, it's this ambiguous love story. Like, it's sort of transcends romance a little bit. It's like,
that's
about
something
connection
Carney
through music.
does so well in all of his movies, like eschewing the obvious romance, but probably a situation where there shouldn't be a romance. It should just be a friendship. It's something we could touch on further in his films. There's even that great moment early on where he sort of tries to crack onto her and she shuts it down, and then he's like, all right, but I still really want to hang out with you and make music with you and stuff. Like, my fucking bad. And yeah, he does that sort of stuff really well.
That's relatable.
One of my favorite scenes, like Falling Slowly, is the song. And I do think maybe the other songs in this aren't quite as memorable as the songs in some of his other films, but there's one scene that always sticks out to me. It's I think the song is called If You Want Me, and it's just this single take of Marquetta like walking down the street and singing, and it's all like red lighting and stuff. And that song's got sort of like a 90s trip hop sort of vibe to it, and that's one that sticks out to me as well. But just the whole process of them recording an album, it's really the foundation for what Carney's movies would be. And I also, I think, without spoiling things, I feel like the ending of Flora and Son kind of evokes the feeling of Once, if that makes sense. It sort of feels like it's going back to him paying tribute to his roots and stuff, but that's something we'll touch on later. But in terms of songs, this is the only Carney song to have won an Oscar, Falling Slowly. I'm not sure if anything from Begin Again was nominated, but Sing Street missed out. But
we'll get to
So
that.
Lost Stars got in, yeah. But is this the only one to have won? And deservingly so. And just I don't know if you've seen the Oscar speech from when they won, but it's like one of the really great Oscar moments is they get up there and give their speech, which is like a huge moment for them. These are just these two like small musicians from Ireland. Glenn Hansard gives a really great speech, and then it's Marquetta, who was only like 20, 21 years old at the time.
Wait, so
goes
the
up to have a
actors are the
moment.
ones who also won for writing the song.
Yeah, they wrote the song completely.
That's
and
wild.
So they won
So
for
good.
it.
That's
and
so cool.
as she's about to speak, she gets played off. It's like, fuck you, Oscars. It's so rude. And then like later on in the show, the host Jon Stewart like brings her back out and makes a point to bring her back out and let her speak. And she gives this really
you go,
like
Jon Stewart.
yeah, and she gives this like really beautiful 30-second speech that apparently later on she said all I wanted to do was say thank you, so I kind of just had to think of that on the spot, and she like nailed it. So look up that Oscar speech. It's a really, really great Oscar moment.
About the actors, I feel like there's something unique to Glenn Hansard where he's not like, he doesn't feel like this Hollywood leading man necessarily, but they're both still these, especially, and he's like this very like humble music guy. Like I'm sure you've seen people like him on the streets of Ireland playing guitar. We're gonna make.
I've seen people like him on the streets of Adelaide, Australia. They're everywhere, and it's great that that sort of story was told. And his voice, like those high notes he hits, man, like just
they're both lovely. And I do agree that Falling Slowly is probably the only one I'll remember now. But I'm sure if I look back at the clips, I'll still enjoy them, even if I forgot the names. And all the character dynamics are just so well written, like not just between the two of them, but also her as a mother. And so on, and how that plays into like the harder decisions that they have to make.
Also, the scene with his dad toward the end is really moving, because again, he just seems like this background guy who he's stuck helping, but then he's like so encouraging. It's like, I think a recurring theme in his movies is sort of like, you don't know how much support and love you have that's like right in front of you. You just kind of got to look for it. And yeah, that's
the scene with his dad is like
brilliant, son. Go do it.
No, the scene with his dad being supportive like melts your heart, because I think it goes against all the expectations you'd have of like British dad in movies. So yeah, but yeah, that's a wonderful scene.
It's like that silent stoic stereotype, right? The father who grew up in the 60s and the 70s and had probably had a really laborious job and drinks Guinness
the dad
all day.
And Billy Elliot, who
the
like
typical like biopic cliche, he crushes his music dreams because he wants him to work in the vacuum factory, you know.
Who's gonna run the vacuum store when I die? Yeah,
the wrong kid died. You
like
know,
Elemental. No.
Yeah, literally like Elemental. Yeah, it does make that scene so much more impactful because of the kind of stereotypes you go in as an audience member with the film. So we actually don't spend that much time with the dad throughout the film. He's in a few scenes, you know, we meet him first in the vacuum shop when he's fixing the vacuum for it. But like, it's very sporadic throughout, but it makes us feel like they have a bit of distance, like not in a very malicious way, but it just seems like there's distance between those two characters. So when he does go in the very Irish way, it's like, that's fucking brilliant. He says really nice things, and then you just add the F word in every third word for this movie, and then you've got the script for once. But it just makes that so much more impactful and hammers down on the fact that, like Jacob was saying, you don't know how much love and support you have around you, but I think it adds another aspect or another layer to John Carney's ability to show you that love doesn't just have to come through romance. And I think that's what a lot of films that would potentially be like, you know, that fall in the same genre as this would focus on the romance, whereas there are so many different types of love that I think John Carney's just very good at showing the human side of that.
Yeah, I think it's a really special movie. It's one that doesn't get talked about much now. I saw it 10 years ago, and I watched it again yesterday for the first time in like 7 years. And I'm like, why did I sit on this for 7 years? I think it's a perfect movie and a really a must see if you're into this sort of genre. Because I know a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I really love Sing Street, but I've never seen once. Like I've never gone back to it. So I just encourage you to see it. Really, that's
going back.
I'll just be happy to say it's a lovely little film. Anyone who loves music and movies, I think you won't regret watching it. It's very accessible. As is the next film we'll be talking about that John Carney directed. In 2014 it came out, and it's called Begin Again. Funnily enough, the original title of this movie, when it was first advertised in like an Entertainment Weekly magazine issue or something, was Can a Song Save Your Life? That is the original title, I believe.
I read that today, and I'm glad that's not the title. I love the sentiment, but it's kind of a corny title.
So, I mean, Begin Again is also like it could work for a lot of
pretty
different
generic
topics,
yeah.
but it works. It's also like a cute title for a cute movie. I think I watched this movie. I've definitely seen it twice. I think the first time was I was like okay because I was on vacation. It was on TV. I don't think I finished it. Then I watched Sing Street, and a month later I watched it because it was on Netflix. I was like, wow, this movie's really good. Basically, we got Mark Ruffalo as the guy who um, used to be a label executive, used to be a successful one. Now he's estranged from his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, Keira Knightley is the ex-girlfriend of this popular musician who now wants to make a name for herself as a musician, and they join forces in really lovely ways and help each other rediscover the meaning of life and everything John Carney-esque.
Yeah, this was my introduction to John Carney. This is a very, very special movie to me. All of Carney's are, but this one I think even more so than once. And I think it's one of his more underrated films because a lot of people will come out and say, "Oh, that was alright, that was cute." But whereas for me, it is genuinely like a really go-to comfort movie for me, and every time I come back to it, I just like I'm transported again. And I think this has really memorable songs as well, like more than just like the one big hit. Just like Sing Street, everyone might come out having a different favorite one. Like Lost Stars was the big hit, but I always really connected with the one they do on the rooftop. Tell Me If You Want to Go Home. I think that's such a fun number where they get
I feel like
Ruffalo's daughter in.
I feel like that's almost like the emotional plateau of the movie. It's like the climax of "Tell Me Where You Want to Go Home."
I love that scene. I love Coming Up Roses. I love the one the voicemail one she records to Adam Levine's character, and also just great casting. Adam Levine is a douche.
Big stretch.
I'm sure. I mean, John Carney must see something in him, but.
Yeah, wait, it holds up now. The character, it holds up really well.
So I was gonna say, it's funny considering John Carney was like weirdly critical about Keira Knightley after the release as well, and then you're like, well, at least you got the one bit of casting right in old Adam.
I think he's since squashed the beef with Keira Knightley. I think he's since like apologized to her and stuff. I don't know what was going on with that. Yeah, he came out saying that he was fed up with professional actors and talked shit about Keira Knightley's work on it.
It was during the press for Sing Street, and I've just got the quote here. He said, "Sing Street's a small personal movie with no Keira Knightley's in it. It's really rewarding." I'm like, phew. And then he said, "I'll never make a film with supermodels again."
Yeah, I'm looking at that too now. He said, "I think
also,
with Keira, it was like
Keira Knightley a
supermodel.
She's like a legit." Respected great actor. I don't like,
and
she was Oscar nominated 10 years before that.
Yeah, right? that was a rare John Carney.
That Begin Again came out. Some directors have their lower points, but she's also wonderful in the movie. I don't know why he was so critical of.
Agreed. I thought she was great in the film.
She's brilliant. It's one of her best
Also, I love how she finds out. Like, she just finds out from what the song is like that he was cheating. She was like, "What's her name? Who is it?" Like, it's not like anything.
She understands music so deeply that she's like, "That song is not fucking for me. I can tell right now."
Who's it for? Yeah.
That's such a brutal scene, though. Like I think that's where she's fantastic in the whole movie. But I feel like that is a testament to Carney's writing. In the sense that we don't need a character to be like, we didn't need Adam Levine to come in and be like, "Hey, I wrote this song," and then he plays it and he's like, "But it's not about you." You know, it's not on the nose. She's in tune with herself. She's in tune with the music, but she understands the music that she had created with Adam Levine's character for years before he was successful. To know that wasn't about her. And I think that's more of a testament to Carney not treating the audience like we're idiots, to be honest.
Also, it's a real highlight of this movie. I think it's one of the only movies where James Corden is tolerable. I actually like him in this.
Dude,
I like him in this.
I agree.
My first note is James fucking Corden. I was like, God damn. But then, it was before all the Late Show success, so...
Yeah, exactly.
And,
this
CeeLo
movie
Green
might have even
too,
been
no?
my first experience with Corden.
Yeah, CeeLo Green. Where's he at these
what
days?
happened to him? Where's he been?
Yeah, his one scene, he's just like risen up Keira the whole time. I respect it.
And then that's what like. It's funny because he gets a full credit. I think he gets the "and" credit as well. It's like "and CeeLo Green." I'm like, oh damn, he might have some cool stuff to do in this movie. He's like, no, he's just hitting on Keira, and then
he's got a song on the soundtrack too.
So there we go. Go.
Again, this was like this is much earlier on than when I saw Once. So the whole point about it usually being a romance but not being a romance, because I was so used to that. I saw this movie when I was 13, 14. So I was like for sure that they were going to get together. So I was so relieved that they were just friends. the whole movie, Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo. He ends up managing to reconcile with his ex-wife, played by Catherine Keener. This is also a trio of movies with Mark Ruffalo and Catherine Keener starring together as either partners or love interests. It's this, Where the Wild Things Are, and The Adam Project. The Mark Ruffalo, Catherine
the Adam
Keener,
Project.
Holy
Shit.
Trinity.
I haven't seen Where the Wild Things Are in probably since it came out.
I just
actually.
recently watched it for a podcast we did on Spike Jonze. But it's actually very good, surprisingly.
I know. I really want to go. I might have to go back and watch that.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the movies because I haven't seen Wild Things, and I've repressed the Adam Project from my memory. So,
I like that one.
What
were you gonna say?
I jest. It was okay.
Obviously, with the budget, he was able to do this because this is obviously a much better, I guess you could say, traditionally cinematographically better looking film than Once, right? But he still manages to capture this charm. And something I love that he does is to show how Mark Ruffalo understands music. When Keira Knightley is playing her first song at the open mic night, he's envisaging what the instruments would sound like to make a full track. And we almost see like the ghost piano play. We see the ghost drums. I thought that was a really fun touch. I really actually enjoyed that aspect of the film because it adds a bit more validity to his character when it comes to, hey, we're going to record this album in the streets and we're going to get the sounds of, I believe it's New York City if I'm not mistaken, right? Get the sounds of the city into these albums, and this is what I know it's going to sound like. I think it's fun, and obviously John Carney plays with that a little bit more, I guess, in Flora and Son, as we'll talk about. Those sorts of more mystical's not the right word, but more fantasy-like elements, I guess, and I like that a lot.
That's actually something I was going to bring up. It's such a great love letter to New York City. When I watched it again today, I forgot about that, and it made me really wistful because I was there a couple weeks ago for a few days, and so many spots I went to were like locations where they recorded songs in the film. And I think Ruffalo says at one point, "Let's make it like a tribute to this beautiful, crazy, fractured city that we live in." And it really does capture so much of that, not just in the sounds, but in terms of the people they interact with and the locations.
Characters aside, which is our preferred version of Lost Stars? The Keira Knightley version or the Adam Levine version?
I mean,
it's Keira Knightley.
For me, it's the Keira Knightley version. I like what the Adam Levine version does in the story, and I get like it wasn't one that I sat back and listened and went, ugh, yuck. But I feel like there's just so much raw emotion. It to me, that gave me that Once feel.
I think they're both good.
Again, they're both great. Like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I was so much more.
No, I prefer the album version that's really shitty and sped up.
Gotta sell them CDs, man. gotta give the people what they want.
For today's standards, it actually did really well. It cost $8 million to make and made $84 million at the box office, which I think
I miss the days when movies like this could make that kind of money.
Yeah, it's kind of sad what's been up with the original movies, but
now they get buried on Apple TV like Flora and Son.
Yeah, we were lucky that we got to see Flora with an audience, which was a pleasure because it's quite a funny movie. But we'll get to that soon.
But so anything else we want to touch on for Begin Again?
One more thing. We know Lost Stars was nominated, did not win, lost to Glory from Selma by John Legend and Common. Do we think that was deserved, or do we think it should have won?
I mean, if I'm picking one of those two songs to throw on and listen to, it's Lost Stars. But I get why Glory won. It's a fucking great song. I'm probably team Lost Stars though.
I remember when they did the live version of Glory at the Academy Awards. Like, it's one of the few songs
I still remember that. Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like amazing. That to me, it was like that's the icing on the cake of that winning. But again, like, similar thing. If you're throwing this on, you're walking down the street, you got the AirPods in, I'm listening to Lost Stars. Like, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Enjoy listening to versus like, oh, this was powerful writing. Like,
all right. So the next film we are going to get into is what probably his most popular film and what some might argue as John Carney's magnum opus. And I think I'd be included in that camp. But we are going to be talking about the 2016 modern classic Sing Street. And Sing Street is just like a quintessential coming of age movie set in the 80s, so you've got that like great nostalgia built into it, starring this is my introduction to him, Ferdia Walsh-Pilo, who's a great young actor and musician, as Connor Lala, a posh kid who gets pulled out of his private school when his parents run out of money, gets put in this gritty public school. And as someone who grew up in a small town, went to public schools, there are so many kids in this movie that just feel like people. I knew in my life and knew as a kid. Like, it feels so real in that regard. But basically, he sees a girl, falls in love with her, and forms a band as an excuse to talk to her. And if that's as good a reason as any to form a band, I love that first scene where he awkwardly rizzes her up and then walks back to this kid he just met. We have to form a band, and then off we go. And this is just such a delightful film. Again, I just rewatched this a few hours ago for like the 15th time to prep for this, but it's just such a great, lovable group of characters. And as John Carney likes it, no super professional celebrity actors, but you've got plenty of professional actors there. You got Jack Raynor and Aidan Gillen and stuff. Like, what separates them from Keira Knightley? Sorry, I'm just at war now from talking shit about Keira Knightley, but he brings up so many of these great unknown kids as well. Gal, what does Sing Street mean to you?
Listen, I'm gonna dig deep into my life embarrassments right now. So my grandparents were in town, and almost 14-year-old me really wanted to go watch Everybody Wants Some in theaters.
That movie rules, to be fair.
In retrospect, probably not a good film to have watched with your grandma, but I didn't know that this was like basically the college version of Hangover. And my parents like watched it, and my parents were like, "No, you're not allowed to watch this. It's too raunchy for you. You're too young." So they didn't let me watch Everybody Wants Some. It's okay. I watched it like 2 months later on a plane. But basically, I was disappointed, and I was like, I really still want to go to the movies. So the movie that me and my grandma settled on, I had not watched a trailer. I had not known what this was. I just knew it was like a musical about a band. It was called Sing Street. And so we went. I went in pretty blind. And like the woman at the theater who sold us the ticket said it was fantastic and that she loved it. So I was like, okay, going in with high expectations. And gotta say, I was swept off of my feet, not even knowing what this movie was, like driving 15 minutes to see a movie that I didn't really know anything about. I absolutely loved it, and it made my top 10 of the year by the end of the year. As soon as they start performing the first song, which is The Riddle of the Model, I just fell in love with this movie and how heartfelt it is. Again, he's like doing a band to impress a girl who's much older than him, who's a model. And
dude, if I ran into
like
Lucy
bonding
Boynton on the street, I'd start a band as well. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy Boynton's a superstar now. She's wonderful in this movie. Freddie Walsh-Pilo is great. Every corner of this, whether it's like him dealing with a parent's divorce and Aidan Gillen being really touching, or Jack Raynor, who I'd before only seen in the arguably the worst Transformers movie, though that's not saying much. Right. So I was like, oh, this guy's just a hot guy, right? And then he was like fantastic in this movie. I only have phenomenal things to say about Sing Street. I adore this movie, and it's for sure my favorite of John Carney's.
I came into this one when I first saw it. It was all post the hype, so it done its Sundance premiere. I'm pretty sure, I think it did get a cinema release here, and it was one of those ones where I was like...
It did, I saw it. I had to travel... Joel, you drove 15 minutes. I had to drive 4 hours because I grew up in a country town.
Oh.
So I would take weekends and go to the city to go watch new releases and stuff.
Would you do a full day of movies if you needed to? Yeah.
I saw this and Swiss Army Man on the same day, which are two of my like all-time favorite movies at this point. So cinema release in Australia. Tangent over. Nick, continue.
No, it's those cinematic experiences we love hearing. That's why we do it. And so I saw it after the hype, and I was so pleased when it lived up to that hype. Similar to you guys, it is just such a charming experience, this film, and it is so fun. It's fun, it's funny, it's sweet, and I just think it not only captures the 1980s punk rock music video revolution like that happened during that time. Like I think it's a really fun commentary on how music videos became so popular. But as well, I think it captures the coming of age experience so well. And I think the thing that really showed that to me that I loved is that every time that Connor finds a new band or his brother introduces him to a new band, he adopts that style of the band, especially in his clothing, or whether he starts wearing the makeup of that band. And to me, that's just a really fun way to signify like someone trying to find their identity. He's at the age, where you don't know who the fuck you are at all. So you keep trying new things and experimenting with new things. And I think it's really cool that this character of Connor got to do it through music. But then you get what I think, until the next movie we're going to talk about, was probably John Carney's funniest movie. Rewatching it, I think I watched it like 2 or 3 days ago. I was pissing myself laughing. Like I just think this movie is so genuinely funny.
I 100% think this is his funniest movie as well.
I think it's also like the sharpest written one, right? Like it's definitely a change of dialogue from the more like relaxed screenplay. In comparison,
it's a much
relaxed.
tighter. It has a much tighter narrative, I think.
It's like wittier one-liners.
It's very much his most movie, like a very. Yeah,
I think that comes through with how the film looks as well. He really has taken, except for some really key scenes, which I think the Riddle of the Model music video is one of them, and the song that they sing in the living room. I can't remember what it's called, sorry. But like that's pretty much some of the only times he adopts that real handheld John Carney style again. A lot of it is very traditional camera blocking and shots like that. So it's definitely, like I said, his most movie in more ways than one. But again, it's not for better or for worse. I think it's just Carney using a different style of filmmaking.
But yeah, that script is so funny, and a lot of that just comes from these unknown kids with these great lines, and like, you know, a bit of that like 80s un-PC-ness coming from everyone, like people calling them the F words every step they go. Like we've all been through that in high school. Darren calling the black kid a gollywog. He's like, you can't say gollywog, Darren.
That's a great exchange joke. See, he's like, why? And he's like, you just can't. It's like, it's, you know, the fact that had to be commentary in 2014.
Yeah, what's gay about the village people? You know, just so many great one-liners.
I did laugh a lot at that one.
In that music video, they all get their moments. Also, Eamon and his love of rabbits, like 2 John Carney movies with just a low-key MVP character named Eamon. I wish I had a friend like that. You know, do you want to write a song together? Always. My heart.
Yeah, I also want to shout out the scene that really stuck with me where he goes to the bully's house, and like this bully's been terrible to him the whole movie, and then you hear like his abusive dad. You realize right away, like you can picture this guy's whole story in your life, and he's like, "You want to come with us and join the band?" He's like, "Fuck yeah!" And it's like right as he's like out of this school environment, he just wants to get away from his home, and I think he portrays like a really empathetic portrayal. Just John Carney's. Besides the shit he talked about Keira Knightley, his love for humanity overall.
Totally.
Yeah.
The common theme where we've been talking about with love in John Carney's films. There's obviously the romantic aspect of you know, Connor wanting to impress this girl that is a model to him. But this one also, I think, breaks down acceptance in love as well. So like Connor really wants acceptance from her, but he also wants acceptance from his brother. The bully wanting acceptance just in general, like he's not getting it from his father. So once this group of friends let him in, this band is, you know, in general accepting each other. I think it's just a beautiful narrative and really well fleshed out characters sort of showcase that. And it's funny how he touches on, you know, just traditional romance. We got the divorce as well, but it's also like a really sweet story about brothers and brotherhood and the importance of, you know, if you are an older brother, the influence you can have on your younger brother as well. And I think John Carney has said in interviews and stuff like that that's what was one of the primary motivators to make this movie, and he actually dedicates it to his brother.
For brothers everywhere.
For brothers everywhere. And then he actually, I think specifically says, I think his brother's name was Kieran, if I recall correctly.
I think he has one named Kieran and one named Jim or John, because I think Begin Again's dedicated specifically to one of those brothers.
I think to Jim is dedicated that one.
He very much, family's a big thing for him, and he clearly has a great relationship with his brothers, and it comes through so well with that Jack. And that Jack Raynor performance, I think, is like one of my favorite supporting performances of the 2010s.
Just in so general, great. I know this is a John Carney episode, but how underrated is Jack Raynor in general?
It's always
whatever you think of Midsommar, he is so good in that movie, playing an absolute prick. And then he's so great as this, as like the older brother who's like, you know, I love you, I'm not going to show you because I'm the older brother. And then they get the really nice moments. Like, he is so goddamn good as an actor.
And Transformers Age of Extinction, you know, where he's like kind of a pedophile.
When he pulls out that stuff. Romeo and Juliet card.
Like, what can't this man do? And we will talk about it more, I guess, when it gets to Flora and Son. But yeah, the scene where he talks about what a jet engine he is, so great. And I find myself relating to that character more and more the older I get. And I think that's something that the movie's really grown with me because it's been with me since it came out. When I watch it as a teenager, I'm relating to Connor and the dreams and the romance and all of that stuff, discovering your taste in the arts and everything. And now I'm like, fuck, now I'm sitting here in my mid-20s not really knowing what to do with my life, but still kind of trying to mentor those before me and say, no, this is the music you have to listen to, these are the films you have to watch. It's really switched to that character who I'm relating to, and I really was looking at him a lot more closely this time around, and his elation in that final scene is just like so joyful. And I guess we need to talk about that final scene. It is like, it's the biggest fairy tale moment in any of John Carney's films. And I know some people are critical of it. Some people come out and say, I think they died in the ocean. I think maybe even Carney might have said something to that effect at some point when discussing it. But I think if you think that, you're lame. They made it to London. They sold those albums. They got the band out of that shithole, as Eamon called it.
They had kids and grandchildren. Connor/Cosmo wasn't the only one who fell in love with Lucy Boynton in this movie. I had a bit of a crush on her watching it as a young man.
So did I as a teenager. It was the first thing I saw her in, and I was really following her career pretty closely after that. And she's really, really great in the film and playing all aspects of the character and how she's sort of hiding behind all the makeup and the swagger and everything. And he gives his characters some dark backstories, John Carney. Lots of trauma and abuse, but he does it in a way that always feels authentic.
Yeah, like the one thing is she did have a boyfriend in the start of the movie, but I guess it's still cute when he jumps in the water and then they kiss and like...
Yeah,
but Gal,
I don't know,
no woman can truly love a man who listens to Phil Collins. He will not be a problem.
American Psycho proved that. But yeah,
it's a good thing she didn't
a little
go
bit
with that guy.
More about this movie. It was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, which is a cool fact. But I know the Oscars, there was a lot of talk for Drive It Like You Stole It being nominated, and that didn't end up happening, which I think is a shame because it would have deserved it. And I think there was probably at least one that it could have subbed out.
It's
that
a real
La La Land or
brutal
Moana that year.
Oscar snub that year because I think that was a really strong year for original song. So I think at the time, Drive It Like You Stole It, I love that song, but I didn't have it in my list because I like am in love with La La Land so much that I would have just nominated 5 La La Land songs. But really, Drive It Like You Stole It should have been nominated, and it's a bummer that it wasn't. But it was a pretty tough year in that category. Also, shout out I'm So Humble from Popstar. That should have got in.
Oh yeah, that should have been nominated too. What the hell? That song's fine.
Why does no one talk about Popstar anymore, man?
Can we do a podcast on Popstar? Never Stop, Never Stopping. That movie rules. Didn't even get a cinema release in Australia. They pulled it because it was flopping so badly.
I forget who I was talking to about this, but I was like, watch Popstar. Great Emma Stone cameo. Great Seal cameo. But yeah, I also love the scene where they're making fun of the headmaster in Sing Street, where they all have the masks of him. Like, who doesn't love making fun of your teachers?
Real quick, what's your favorite song from Sing Street? Are we all on Drive It Like You Stole It?
Drive It Like You Stole It, yeah.
That film genuinely has like 5 or 6 songs that I could choose.
Riddle of the Model's good.
Low-key, that's what I would say.
Like To Find You is such a great ballad. Brown Shoes is so much fun. Gun to my head, probably Drive It Like You Stole It though. Yeah.
I'm Drive It Like You Stole It. Like it's that same as like the last pick. It's like if there's one I'm gonna throw on that I'm gonna really just like vibe out to, it's Drive It Like You Stole It.
Great driving song.
Okay, so let's get into our film review of Flora and Son, which just came out. It's on Apple now, and I don't think there's a way that you'll regret watching it. I said that before just because I think it's so touching and so sweet. And if you've watched John Carney, Jacob said it best. It's the same movie again, but it's so lovely. And I think
as it should be.
This one speaks to how much
it's not broken.
Music and songwriting and playing music can not just bring us together, but bring out the best in all of us. It doesn't matter who you are. So we start with Flora, who's played by Eve Hewson, who I found out after watching the movie is the daughter of Bono, which is so cool. And she kind of just hates life, including her son, which is funny.
I don't know if she hates life. It's more she just has no big ambitions.
I think she's been dealt a raw deal as well. Like she was a young mother. Yeah. She didn't want to be knocked up at like when I think she was like a teenager when it happened. Because he's 14, the son in the film, 14 or 15. and she's 31. So she would have been pregnant with him at like 16. So I think she just feels like she comes from like a low socioeconomic area in Ireland. It's just like, I'm not having the greatest of times.
She hates like her situation more. I want to touch on that because we were talking earlier about stereotypes. I feel like when it comes to teen moms in movies and TV, it's such a touchy subject. It's always she didn't want the kid, she wanted to give him up, or she was irresponsible, she was a bad person. I think that makes it even sweeter in this movie that they're bonding and everything.
Yeah. She makes an attempt, right? Like she knows she wants to connect with her son somehow. She just doesn't know how. No one's been able to show her how to properly connect with her son. And a son who is growing up with the wrong crowd, so to say. You know what I mean? Like he's hanging out with the thugs of the street, the rappers, those
the
dead
wannabe
rappers.
influencers, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like just and again, he just wants acceptance. He just wants to be noticed. So
I think it does a good job subverting what you might expect the film to be. Like she gets this beat up old guitar. It's like, oh, the kid's gonna like come alive through music, but it's actually the mum who sort of finds a new avenue to appreciating life through music, and the kid sort of comes along with that. But it really is Flora's movie and story in a lot of ways. And I also love that Carney's sort of starting to play with electronic music because it's not as maybe traditionally cinematic or old school, but it is a way that so many young people express themselves today. And I think they did a really great job incorporating that sound and having it still feel like a John Carney movie and not something a bit more commercial and populist.
For sure. I will say I love how he combines styles because just again, I didn't even see the trailer. Just from like hearing about it, I was thinking, oh, we're mostly going to be here with like a guitar music, but nah, he does like electronic, like I'll say Justin Bieber style songs or Ed Sheeran style songs with the
Dublin
with the
07
music
is
video
a banger,
with the sun.
right?
Dublin 07 was gold.
That song's
I
fire.
love this music video they shoot because it's like, again,
that's
something
the
I would
song
have been doing.
Officially, Dublin 07?
Yeah, it is, I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought you were joking. I love that. But yeah,
that music video they shoot is such a
wonderful.
beautiful scene. As a kid who made like shitty films and music videos on handheld cameras, enlisting the help of my family members, like it's just again so real, and how rough around the edges it is just like makes it that much more charming. Sorry, Gal, go on.
It's also like the flipping of expectations of like the mom being like, "Ooh, you're into girls now. Tell me more about it." She's like the one encouraging him, like, "Yeah, get that girl." Like, I kind of love that. She's like, "You go," and she's kind of simping over Joseph Gordon-Levitt this whole movie. But I mean, don't
rightly
blame her.
so.
I mean, he's grown that facial hair now. He's playing the acoustic guitar. He's got a lovely LA backdrop behind him. It's like, imagine you growing up in that area of Dublin and you've been living on bare bones cash your whole life. And you're like, that man I could live that life. I could live that life and with him. But he's also just a lovely bloody guy as well.
And they managed to make Zoom calls compelling, which is really not easy to do because a lot of this film gets spent in Zoom calls. And I don't know whether that was a choice or it was a product of the pandemic. I don't know. But either way, it worked for me and it did feel cinematic. And I like the way they worked around it too, using some sort of magical realism to put them in the room together and everything like that. And I'm just glad Joseph Gordon-Levitt's back in movies because there was a while there where he wasn't really around.
I think if anything, I'll touch on those points. I think if anything, the pandemic elevated this movie because suddenly people are getting more connected online with music lessons or doctor's appointments and so on. Like a lot of it, or even like so many like jobs now are hybrid. So I think if anything, that elevated this movie and even thematically about the distance that is like reduced between people because of music. And with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, first of all, what I've heard is that he took some time off between Snowden and the year he did Trial of Chicago 7 because his son was born, which valid. But also love seeing him anywhere. He's, if you know him for Hit Record, like he's always been, his passion is music and creation and what this movie's about, like bringing the creator and artist out of everyone. So he talked about how much like it was his dream to practice music and perform music for a movie because those are the two arts that he loves both, and combining him was really special.
He's a highlight of the movie for me as well. I think because it's fun initially, the back and forth between him and Eve Houston's character is kind of, she's very forthcoming. Very forthcoming. Basically lays it out immediately in their first call. She's like, if I got the chance, I'd probably have sex with you. Like that's, as she's very much like, I'm playing all my cards. And he's like, man, this is a guitar lesson. But like watching their relationship.
I love that.
It's great. And you know, it adds a lot to that humor. And then like I was saying with Sing Street, which is like obviously a very intentionally funny film. I also think this is a very intentionally funny film. Like Begin Again and Once do have their moments of humor, but like they're more feel good dramas where I'm like, these are comedies, like that do have aspects of dramedy, I guess. And Eve Hewson does it so well. But then I think as we watch Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character sort of unfold, and we do find out more about his previous relationship and sort of the reason he has never really chased his dream and I don't want to say settled, but settled to be a guitar teacher. You know, I think he actually has a lot to work with, which again makes those Zoom calls even more compelling. And then when we get that addition of the camera, or John Carney is choosing to show them both in the same room despite the distance, I think, yeah, watching that relationship grow, it's it's impossible to not be drawn in and absolutely feel that.
Yeah, he has this like subtle line where he's like, I tried making money off my music, almost destroyed the thing I love, which I think like speaks levels to a lot of artists' journeys between like passion and making a life off of it. I do want to talk a little more about Eve Hewson's performance, just because I don't think I'd seen her much before.
Amazing.
And she is sensational. Golden Globe split it into musical or comedy, so I'm thinking she could get nominated, but we'll get to that. I think she's just wonderful because she's so savage in this. Like she has so many great jokes, but she's so touching. And again, I love that she's Jacob brought this up after we saw the movie, that she and her ex-husband actually get along, and like she actually invites him to take part in their son's life and in music and be part of the Flora and Son band that they form.
Yeah, Rayner's awesome. He's a character who, at face value, should not be likable, but he kind of is in the end. One of my favorite gags is when they're meeting up and she's like, you want a wine? And he's like, it's 10 a.m. No, I don't want a wine. And they like hard cut to him smashing his third Guinness. Like, yes.
It was good.
It was Irish.
Very... Flora as well. It's a character who is very prickly and she's not the greatest mother at times, but her performance is so goddamn charming that even when she's sitting there objectifying poor Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you're with her, you love her. She's so great. I'm really excited to hopefully see her in more movies after this.
I think it makes her forthcoming nature is sincere though. It's not her being a perv, you know what I mean? Like she's just like, I've been like this my whole life. I'm unapologetically this person. And she knows when it makes him uncomfortable as well. And she knows when it's fun to keep pressing, and then she knows like how to get him, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, to open up. But I think one of the most touching scenes as well for me is when we first hear the son, when we first really find out the son's making music himself, and she's listening to, and she's like, oh my God, like we can do something. It's like for her to click and be like, oh, you know, I tried to be like, I got this guitar intentionally, mainly for you at first, but you know, rather than her being upset that he didn't want to take that up, she sees it as a way to do that. And also, kid can drop bars. That he like for this grime street rap that he's going for. Like he says some fucking cool shit in some of those songs. I was
and
like,
just the Irish accent immediately enhances
elevates
all
it,
rap
right?
lyrics.
So
like it just
much.
sounds so
and
goddamn
he makes
cool.
like a whole rap about basically saying I love my mom. Sound like super badass.
Yeah, it's so true. It's his rap, his verse in the final song is so, it's like touching. Whereas Eve Hewson's character, it's still very sincere in lyrics, but she does have this like Irish snide to it. This really sort of like cutthroat
Our life
comedy.
sucks. Let's celebrate.
Exactly. But he comes in with this real passionate verse about how much it means to him doing this and doing it with his mum, and how much he does love where he's from and what he's become and what he can do. And I was like, man, that final song is pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's pure Carney. Like it's the one song in the film that really feels like the stuff that he's really known for, like that acoustic feel, this weird amalgam of artists performing together, including one guy on a Zoom call on stage, which I thought was a really funny and great image. And
I think it's sweet that like he and Joseph Gordon-Levitt like brought out his drummer friend. They took part in his students' performance. I thought that was lovely, a lovely detail.
Yeah. All his films feel like simultaneously a love letter to his city and a story about people trying to get out of it. But I think because everyone's like, we got to leave this shithole and get to London and stuff. But I think he really does love his city and his people. And
it goes back to this idea of look at all these people, pick up a guitar, pick up a microphone, pick up a piano, go to a music club one night. Let's see how amazing you are. And I think that's sort of his theme, how everyone can be, you can bring something beautiful out of yourself from music, which music is something that 99.99% of people in this world love at least a couple of genres immensely. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it touches everyone in the audience.
Nick, anything you want to say to close us out on Flora and Son?
I have nothing to add. I think you guys have summarized that perfectly. It's just, it manages to blend the raw authenticity of Once with his natural evolution as a filmmaker. Like, again, it's a really good looking film. He, as a director, I think has really stepped into his own to create visually engaging films, but also have that throwback to his foundations. I think, to me, it's like back and forth with Sing Street as to what I find funnier. Like I said, they're both intentional comedies, and I think they're both full of incredibly very Irish sort of humor and jokes, which I love. So, but at the end of the day, if that song at the end, succeeded in giving me the goosebumps, then it means you had a pretty good story to initially. So no, it's such a good movie.
Oh, and also another great use of Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now in a film.
Yes,
using that song in a film is a goddamn cheat code to make me cry. Shout out also to Coda, starring Ferdia Walsh-Pilo, another great use of that song.
Isn't that?
It's a trilogy now. Coda, Flora and Son, and Hereditary, and the Toy Story 4 trailer.
Hereditary used that song?
Yeah,
I don't even remember that. Holy shit. Hereditary didn't
the end credits. But yeah, to close this out, I want to ask, I think we should start with Nick, because you're our guest of honor. How would you rank these 4 films that we just talked about?
Okay, I'll go 4-1. So I'm gonna go Begin Again, Flora and Son, Sing Street, Once, Sing Street. That was tough. And that's going to change tomorrow, probably.
So Sing Street is number 1?
You did well off the top.
Sing Street's number 1 for me, yeah.
I'll go 5-1 because I've seen 5, and I'll briefly touch on his debut feature, which is called On the Edge. Came out in 2001, and it's not about music, crazy. It has a banging soundtrack. Like 2 minutes in, you're hearing the Smashing Pumpkins, and I'm like, all right, I would trust John Carney with the aux chord every day of the week. But it's just this really great drama about Cillian Murphy is the lead, and he plays this guy who attempts suicide after his father dies, and he gets put in this psychiatric facility, and it's just about these characters and going through therapy and stuff. And I think it's my least favorite Carney film, but I still think it's a really great film worth seeking out if anyone's interested in it. I didn't even know it existed until a few days ago, so I checked it out before this. Number 4 for me would be Flora and Son. The other 3 are all 5-star movies for me. I absolutely adore them, so I genuinely would call John Carney one of my favorite directors because of that. So this is where it gets really brutal. Third for me is probably Once. It just doesn't quite have the same memorable songs magic as the other 2 do for me. Second would be Begin Again. Again, I talked ad nauseum about how it just has such a place in my heart. But Sing Street, I think, is his masterpiece, and would be one of my favorite films of all time. It's one of the first films I show anyone. If I make a new friend or if I'm hanging out with someone, it'll be one of the first films I throw on if we're hanging out watching movies. Like, you haven't seen Sing Street? Because who the hell wouldn't love that movie? Like, you'll have 100% success rate showing people that movie. It's just so goddamn charming.
So number 4, I'll go with Once, but it's still a 9 out of 10 movie. So it just goes to show how much fun we're having recording this. 3, I'll go Begin Again. Number 2, Flora and Son. And then number 1, surprise, surprise, Sing Street. And then to close this out, what is our favorite song from any John Carney movie? Because we talked about a lot of good ones. I think I have one that I don't know if it'll surprise you.
Dublin 07.
I was going to actually say, unironically, The Riddle of the Model.
There are no wrong answers here.
That's the thing. Like, all the songs are fantastic in their own right. I mean, like, maybe it's just because of how long this song's been with me and just how moving it is. Like, it's so hard to not say Falling Slowly.
Yeah, I could do a 3-hour podcast on the songs in all John Carney's films. There are so many great ones that are all still in my rotation. But I too would say Falling Slowly. I think it is a masterpiece of a song, one of the greatest songs ever written for a film, so deservingly won that Oscar. And I find myself, like, after rewatching the movie yesterday, I was driving somewhere and I found myself just singing it to myself in the car, like belting out those high notes really terribly. We've all done it. So yeah, Falling Slowly for me, but there are so many depending on what day it is.
Drive It Like You Stole It's close.
Yeah.
That's the, if I need to pick me up, that's definitely going on.
So anyway, all you Carney heads who have made it to the end, thank you so much for listening. Nick, where can people find you online? Tell us about what you've been doing.
Yeah, for sure. So the best place to find me is on Instagram at Nick's Flicks Fix. So I start out there. I do 60-second video reviews, but you can also find everything else I do there. I do a couple of podcasts, monthly podcasts with a few of my friends here in Brisbane, all film related, whether it's about latest blockbusters, foreign films, or one I do where we read a book and then watch the movie it was adapted into. And I write for NovaStream here in Australia, which has been I've been very lucky with that. We get to interview some cool celebrities, movie directors, and now hopefully some writers will come back again. And once they start paying the actors properly, we'll start being able to talk to them as well. So best place to find that all is at Nick's Flicks Fix on Instagram.
Awesome. And Jacob, thank you again for joining me. This won't be the last that you see of him, because you'll also be able to hear him on our Mel Brooks Spotlight and more in the future. And then you can find his on at the Film Draft on Instagram, and Jacob watches films, and myself on Film Toppings and
I don't
Film
get to do my own
Pod.
sign off. All right, I see how it is.
That's my bad.
No.
Yeah, so follow us on Feature Fanatics as well on Instagram and Spotify and YouTube, most importantly. And this has been Gal once again, and thank you so much for listening.